Joining me in the studio today is Judd, and this is a bit of a personal podcast for me, as Pete is one of my best friends. And let me tell you, we've had some crazy sessions together, but now we spend our time going out for dinner and hitting the gym. And then tell me, how did that escalate into your using cocaine?
My marriage had failed, my business was gone, everything I'd worked for was just not really there anymore.
When you're looking back, what else do you think contributed to your drug use?
Obviously my depression, I knew what the problems were, but I just couldn't figure out a way to get out of it. What people don't understand about cocaine is it starts off in a social environment, and before you know it, you're sat at home by yourself for 2 or 3 days. There was so many low points for me. It was a really bad time. Let's be fair, I was living in a spare room at one fucking point. The worst thing that I lost, as I said to you, was
Elliott Wald, addiction specialist. Coming clean with me.
Hello, I'm Elliott Wald, and welcome to another episode of Coming Clean with me. Joining me in the studio today is Judd. Pete grew up in a middle-class family, one of 3 children. He was sent to a boarding school at a young age, and from his late teens, Pete worked as a doorman in various clubs. He earned a formidable reputation in the security industry. In his mid to late 20s, it all came crashing down after the collapse of his marriage, when he then became dependent on cocaine. Today, he owns a portfolio of nightclubs and holds senior positions within large corporations. And this is a bit of a personal podcast for me, as Pete is one of my best friends. And let me tell you, we've had some crazy sessions together. But now we spend our time going out for dinner and hitting the gym. And without further ado, let me introduce you my brother from another mother, Pete Judd. How you doing, Pete?
good, mate, yourself?
I'm very good. Thank you for joining me.
It's good to see you.
Good. So, Pete, tell me what it was like growing up for you as a child.
I came from a pretty middle-class family, as you said. I was shipped off to a boarding school at a pretty young age. I think it's about 12 I was sent off to boarding school. I think my parents felt I had that potential. There were other issues and dynamics within my family that I think me and my brother were ideally split up. He was set to live on a farm down in Dorset, and I was shipped off to a boarding school. I think, there was a number of reasons behind it. I think the idea was to get us both settled and give us a chance to succeed.
Okay. And then you started working on the door. You worked in various clubs. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I started quite young. At the age of 18, I first started working on the door. I was, if you go back to my school years, I was shipped off to this really expensive boarding school. I was a bit of a cat out of water, fish out of water, if you like. Everyone was intelligent. Everyone was bright. Everyone was better than me at that. For me, I excelled in sports, and I think I naturally didn't really know where I was going to kind of go in life. Came out from there and literally started this 9 till 5 job, and I was double timing, working nights, 5 nights a week on the door.
Okay. And then tell me, how did that escalate into your using cocaine?
I lived a pretty adventurous youth, I think. That kind of industry is pretty ancestral. You mix with some interesting characters. I think I probably took a few wrong turns along the way. Went through some terrible relationships and made a lot of mistakes, I think. I came out of my marriage and just, I don't know how to describe it, but just hit a wall. Everything that I thought I wanted out of life was no longer possible for me. Everything that I'd achieved to that point, and I'd done really well when I was young, made really, really good money. And I think a lot of friends of mine who'd been to the same school as me, they went to university, and I was far exceeding anyone's expectations. At that stage, everything pretty much came crashing down. I don't really know how I started.
You sold your company. Right?
Yeah, I sold.
Your marriage was over.
I sold off my shares of the company to keep myself going. I no longer had that desire to work because I didn't really know what I was doing it for. I think at the time when I was young and when I was married, I was like, I want to provide a future for everybody, put a roof over everybody's head. That was, the carpet was pulled from under me, if you like. From that point, I fell into drugs, and it was, I think, maybe an escape for me.
Right.
I was quite a closed book. I think when you and me first met, I was a really closed book.
Yeah.
I think there were a lot of factors that went wrong in my life, it was a very similar time. You and I both lost one of our best friends.
Yep.
Which ended up you and me meeting. I think, my marriage had failed. My business was gone. Everything I'd worked for was kind of just not really there anymore. And I think I was kind of trying to work out who I was. Because I was such a closed book, I think that, cocaine is one of those things that kind of, you start to talk. You get into that environment where you don't stop talking. And I think for me, I was like, wow, do you know what? For someone who doesn't really say much,
Yeah.
I was Mr. Chatty at the party, wasn't I?
This is true. And for those, I mean, I know Pete very well, as I said, but Pete is very quiet when we go out. He's there. He's just in the background. He doesn't really say much. And then at the end of the night, he's one of these people going like, yeah, I had a great fucking time, great time. We just sat in the back of the room, didn't even say anything. That's how you are, right?
Yeah, I'm a watcher. I'm a people watcher. I like to be in the background, front around, and I don't really like to be the attention of any of people's interest. I don't think I let many people in. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
To this day, I've got a handful of friends, and they've been friends of mine for 20, 30 years. I've always kept my life very, very private, and at this stage, cocaine gave me that opportunity to actually open up and talk about, we had some mad 2 or 3 day sessions where we'd sit there and put the whole fucking world to rights.
We did.
And, we were fantastic politicians in them days. It really brought me out of myself. And I think it gave me the opportunity to express myself.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think I bottled up for so many years. To me, it was addictive. That personality that it gave me was addictive. But again, what people don't understand about cocaine is it starts off in a social environment, and before you know it, you're sat at home by yourself for 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
It can be so dark and so soul destroying. But it didn't take me long to get there, I don't think.
Yeah. And how frequently were you using then?
In the end,
Yeah.
every day.
Daily.
As I said to you once, Mondays, Tuesdays, any day that ended a Y, I was happy to go for it.
Yeah.
What was my favourite saying in the day? What was it?
It's still early.
It's still early.
It's still early.
It's still early.
Those words will haunt me for the rest of my life. At 4 a.m. when it's still early.
Should we do just one last and go to bed? Oh, mate, it's still early. It's 4 o'clock in the morning. We've got 2 or 3 days to go.
Yeah, it's true. And well, you were a dry sniffer, right?
Yeah, I could do it with drink. I could do it without drink. I could do it with people or without people. I think in the end, in the second half, I mean, I'd lost all self-respect for myself. Everything that I'd worked for and the respect I'd earned over the years was gone. I could sit there and destroy myself for 2 or 3 days. It's really soul destroying. But yeah, I could do it with drink, without drink. I wasn't fussy,
Yeah. But it's interesting because although cocaine was an issue and a challenge for you, alcohol really wasn't, was it?
No, not at all. I could take it or leave it. Still, I never really drunk. When you and I first met, I wasn't really a drinker,
No,
and
same as.
I'm still not really a massive drinker.
Yeah.
I'm quite. I like to know how I like to know I can get home. I like to know that I get quite anxious if I have to rely on sort of public transport or a lift home or something. I prefer not to go. I'm quite happy to go out and drive somewhere and drive home. Stay on soft drinks. But yeah, back in the day, drink was never an issue for me.
Yeah. I think for you probably was that social anxiety, that confidence it gives you.
Yeah, it was, because as you said, I was so quiet. People used to look at me. I was a lump of a guy back in the day. And people used to look at me as the angry person in the room that never said anything. I've just got one of those faces that just kind of looks angry and miserable, but it's just one of those faces. But that wasn't really me. Inside, I think I was this, crying out. I just never knew what to say, and I think cocaine gave me that confidence.
Okay. And what was your low point? What was the lowest point that made you decide I've got to do something now?
I always used to think, do you know what, I was quite intelligent. No, I wasn't. No, I'll tell a lie. I was bright, but I was never academic. There was many situations in my life where I could sit there and I knew I was in a bad situation, but I could potentially think my way out of it. And I truly believe that cocaine really messes with your brain cells, because there were times where I was really addicted to cocaine. I just could not think of a way for it. Was just looking through fuzz. You can't see the wood through the trees. I knew what the problems were, but I just couldn't figure out a way to get out of it. There was so many low points for me. It was a really bad time. It was a really bad time. In all honesty, everything I'd ever achieved, let's be fair, I was living in a spare room at one fucking point. I'd lost every penny I had. I bought my first Range Rover, 21, 22 years old. I was a successful guy. I lost it all within a matter of 3 or 4 years.
Strips you of everything, doesn't it?
Do you know what? Not just financially. It's £1,000 a week problem. You do that. You do the simple maths. 52 weeks of the year, 5 years. You're talking £250,000.
Yeah.
I not only did I lose financially, I lost my own dignity. I think it was the real issue for me. Everybody who I was friends with, I cut out my life. I think, and that wasn't because necessarily. I think I was more embarrassed.
Yeah.
My family's quite especially in them days, was really dispersed, and we were never a massively close family. And I think the ones that I still were in contact with, I think I was more embarrassed to see.
You moved town as well.
Yeah, several times. I moved out of the environment I was in a really ancestral town that I'd lived in and worked in for a lot of years, and kind of everybody knew me. And I moved away from there. I moved away 2 or 3 times. There was a number, that wasn't just cocaine that did that. I think there were circumstances behind. There was relationships going on that was trying to hold down relationships at those times.
I think certainly, if I look back on our past over those years, I think it certainly was a melting pot, so to speak, because there was you, there was me, and there was, I'm not going to say their names because they're not sitting here, and that's not my place to do, but the other people, there was our little group, and going out, going out, end up using.
We were a really tight-knit brotherhood, really. There's a couple of us that still aren't here today. There was 5 or 6 or 7 of us.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, 2 of those aren't here today. It's hard. It's.
Do you think being around all of us that used as well made it more difficult for any one of us to get out at the time?
100%. I think we were all a bad catalyst for each other. And in all honesty, I don't think we ever really said this, but in the end, I had to leave.
Yeah.
I think I had that opportunity to get out, and yet I moved town and just lost touch with people for a couple of years, didn't I?
Yeah, you definitely did.
But I had to get clean.
Yeah, to me, I kind of left you on the outside because I knew what you were going through and what you wanted to address, and I thought it was right for you.
Yeah.
But I also think that it was meeting your daughter's mum was a massive help.
100%. That's a kind of a story in itself. I'd been through a patch of 2 or 3 or 4 years with a girl who also had drug problems.
Yes.
And
actually, do you know what? Before we move on to the mother of your child, the mother of Maddie, let's just take a moment to think about that, because there was that girl in your life who was, well, you're both fucking nuts, to be fair. But she was as nuts as you were as nuts. In fact,
I think the way that someone described, I can't remember whether it was you, but she was like a fuse and I was like a fucking bomb. And literally something would light her and literally it would just erupt. And, we couldn't live with each other. We couldn't live without each other. I don't, to this day, not sure whether it was love, lust, or just fucking hate for each other.
I think it was sex. If I remember rightly, I actually think it was just sex.
Yeah.
I think it was a question of coke, sex, shag. I think that was the reason.
Yeah.
But I think, both of you using at the time and the relationship that was so fucking dynamic.
I'm not sure dynamic is the right word. Explosive. Yeah. I mean, she was fucking nuts. I don't. Yeah, we were as bad as each other, and we were as it was a very toxic relationship. But I think, in them times, I didn't think we wanted to be with each other. I just don't think either of us wanted them to be with someone else. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We both knew that relationship was so toxic. But, we both had bloody problems. And
you both use gear together.
yeah, I think our relationship at that time was all based around drug use.
That's true.
And, if she had a really strange, she had a different job that she worked nights, I was working days at the time. And she'd come home from work at 4 o'clock in the morning and be like, let's get on a session. I'm like, well, Jesus, I've got a bit of work in a few hours. Fuck work, let's just get on it. And it was a really crazy situation to be in. But we, I don't think we could, at that time, I don't think we could get away from each other. She had her own issues to deal with. I had a lot of my own issues to deal with. And I don't think there was any resolving those where we had the issues we did.
And when you were together, you were using, because if you were using, you weren't arguing.
Yeah, I think we probably even argued when we were doing it, but yeah.
And then you met, and then let's move forward. That you met Maddie's mum.
Yeah.
How did that help get you clean?
Wow, she. It's funny actually, because I texted her the other night and I said I was doing this, and just to make sure that I'm not going to name her by person. She wouldn't have an issue with it anyway, but to this day, so much respect for her.
Actually, I'm going to say, because I'm not going to say her name either, but I've got 1,000% respect for you. You know who you are.
We started dating. She's one of these people, she wouldn't even break the speed limit. She's so straight, it's untrue, and I think that was the difficult thing as well, is because she'd never been around someone who had drug problems or used drugs. I don't think she could see the symptoms of it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
There's those little things that she couldn't pick up on and didn't identify. So we'd started dating for 3, 4, 5, maybe even 6 months, and we'd make plans. It was very casual. I can't even remember how we met. It was through a friend of a friend or something like that. And we'd plan to do something at the weekend, and come Friday night, I'd go out with you guys, and I'd turn my phone off, and I wouldn't really sober up till Tuesday, and I'd then turn my phone back on. Sorry, weekend's gone. This carried on for a few months. So she dropped me a text 3 or 4, 5 months later, and I was just like, do you know what? I think you're a really nice guy. Think that had high hopes for us, but it's just, I think you like going out at the weekend. I think you like to meet birds and do whatever you want to do. I couldn't get fucking hard, and I'd done so much gear. Jesus Christ, but. Yeah, she was like, I think you want to go out and meet girls and whatever else, and enjoy yourself. And she wanted somebody more stable. And she was an amazing person. Still is to this day. We've got a fantastic daughter together. She dumped me. Let's say it how it is.
Short, sharp pain.
Yeah, it was. And for the first time, I kind of I think I went out of a session. Yeah, okay, off onwards and upwards. Do you know what I mean? Line them up. And we had a bit of a session, had a bit of a crazy one on my own. 2 or 3 days later, I was like, where that come down comes, isn't it? It's like you sit there and you pick your life apart, and you're like, do you know what?
Especially, I would say, is that you have a slight tendency to be depressed and to have depressive thoughts.
Yeah, I was diagnosed with clinical depression from a really young age. I'm a very high functioning manic depressive. Don't really mind saying that. That's always been me. Let's be honest. That's one of my downfalls. But I think over the years I've learned to work with it and learned to how to get the best out of it. So yeah, I think she finished with me. I went on a bit of a session. Had that come down. I was like, God, what have I done? This was an opportunity for me to get out, and wasted that. And I think at this stage, I think she'd blocked me on WhatsApp or I can't remember whether WhatsApp was about them days. I think I turned up around the house and knocked on the door, and I was like, look, I've made a mistake, and I came out with it. I said, look, I'm a drug addict.
What was her response?
It was a really tough conversation for me. Someone who knew nothing about drugs. She took me in. She she said, you know, I want to help you. Conditions are you move in with me, and we start again, and we did. And I think to this day, I left where I was living, moved out, moved in with her, and slowly started again. Yeah, and it was everything I've achieved to this day is down to her. And
That's
I said,
good.
we've got a fantastic child we have together.
When you're looking back, what else do you think contributed to your drug use?
Obviously, my depression was a massive issue to that. The life I'd lived when I was younger, I always struggled with the consequences of what I'd done, the morality of what had happened over them years. I think
You're
that,
talking about working on the door.
yeah, I think a lot of the things that we did and we got
Yeah.
up to,
Yeah.
you know, yeah, I think I struggled with a lot of that, the dynamic of what had happened there. Yeah, I think you know, drugs or cocaine certainly gives you that ability to kind of have a you know, to block. You don't actually, let's be honest, it doesn't solve anything. You're kind of burying your head in the sand, aren't you?
Absolutely.
You're trying to numb the pain. That's what drugs does. It numbs the pain. And especially when you're doing it on your own, and you're sitting there and you're destroying yourself.
Yeah.
It is a very yeah. There were times where you sit there and you know, the way that you and I used to do drugs is we'd take drugs to come up.
Yep.
And then we'd be relying on Valium to bring us back down.
Exactly. So there were plenty of times we wouldn't use unless we had Valium.
Exactly, yeah, 100%. And we used to buy Valium in thousands, didn't we? We'd literally 5 or 6 of us a chip in,
Yep.
and we were buying bags of 1,000 Valium because we were going through. I mean, God, people laugh, and I think they think I'm bullshitting when I say we would drop 10 or 15 Valium
Yeah.
a night.
10, 15 diazepam in a
Yeah.
night.
And, you know, literally, we used to say to ourselves, we need to get up to bed within 5 or 10 minutes because our legs won't function and go up the stairs. Do you remember those
I
conversations?
actually do remember.
Right,
I actually do.
We would sit there and be like, look, we've got 10-minute stopgap now to get our asses up into bed because otherwise we won't manage, we'll be carrying each other up the stairs because our legs are shot out. And that's the way. And do you know what? There were times where I would lie in bed and I feel like I'm fucking levitating, right? And I had a conversation with someone else about this years ago. I'd lie there and I would be so high, and I'd be like, God, is this the last time? You know, is this my time? You know, is something going to go pop now? Weirdly, years on later after that, I did end up having a heart attack. But yeah, I used to lie there and my chest is beating. You know, my heart's beating out my chest, and yeah, I used to lie there thinking, God, have I overcooked it this time? And but yeah, we're still here to tell.
Did you get paranoia with it?
I wasn't too bad in all
I
honesty.
don't really remember that.
No, you know, I think it affects different people in different ways.
Yeah.
I think that earlier on, it's weird because, you know, when in our earlier, I say career, it's not really a career, but
The career of using.
yeah, in the early days of using, we would honestly, it was such a. We didn't used to do. I know there's a lot of people now that go out to a nightclub or go to a pub or a bar and sit there and rack up a line off a cistern. What the fuck is that about? In all honesty, like, it's disgusting. We were more social about it. You know, we'd probably go out for a few drinks and do a couple of bumps along the night. But really, we'd then head up back to someone's house, wouldn't we? And that we'd be there putting the worlds to rights, having some fantastic conversations. And, you know, we'd really bond and, you know, drink, and we'd be sat there for 2 or 3.
Deep.
Yeah, really deep conversations. And we'd have a lot of the same sort of conversations over and over again, let's be honest.
I don't know anybody that uses cocaine and doesn't have the same conversations over and over again with their close friends.
Yeah. You know, so we'd find ourselves having the same conversation over and over again. But yeah, in all honesty, as I said, you know, the dynamic, we'd never really do it out. I think there was a couple of times where, you know, do you remember in Luton and Liquid and Envy and places like that, we'd go in there. And I think there was one time, I can't remember who I was in there with, but there, you know, you and a few people. And I was actually in the toilets in the men's cubicle and I was racking one up on the back of this. It's fucking pathetic. And this doorman jumped over. And I think he looked at me. I was like, well, fuck, getting him out. And he was like, mate, just do me a favour and just, you know, like put it away. I was like, yeah, no worries at all. I think he knew that we'd been in there was a big group.
I think just to say to the people listening, I think to add a caveat, when we went out, there was always a group of 5, 10 of us, right?
Yeah.
And everybody we know trained. Everybody
Yeah.
was a bit of a lump.
Yeah.
And then you went into a bar, we knew all the doormen
Yeah.
of wherever we went. So for us, I think it was slightly different. We got away with doing things that you possibly couldn't do.
And I think in all honesty, they thought, God, I don't want to try and get him out. You know,
Yeah.
I was 18, 19 stone then.
Yeah.
And they were like, no, bugger that. That's too much like hard work. Do me a favour, mate. Just put it away.
Yeah.
And but in all honesty, we weren't bad like that. We'd always go back to someone's house. You know, we'd spend our days and nights at people's houses. But yeah, that was how our usage, you know, was. But yeah, it was all based around coming up and then coming down.
Yeah. I always ask my guests to share one of their crazy stories, but in your case, I'm actually going to share one for you. I might let you think of another one, but something that really stands out in my mind when you were living with me for that period of time and we were on it like actually every evening. And I remember another friend of ours who again is no longer with us, passed away. And we were both sitting there, well, the three of us sitting there, and you had to go to work.
I know this
in
story.
the morning. I don't know where it was like 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock. You had to leave for work.
Was that? Do you know what? It's weird because over the year, I've said this to you before. I did so many drugs in them days, and I did so many sleeping tablets in them days. It's really foggy to me now.
Yeah.
The clarity of what happened. You know, I don't remember a lot of it. In all honesty, those years for me, whether I mentally shut them out or whether those years for me were just too abusive of drugs that I've got no recollection of them. Because there was a few times. There was one day. Do you remember the day that we'd all been out? I think it was the same group of people. And I was like, oh, I've got to go work in a bit. I'm going to go put my head down in your son's bed.
I think this is the one I'm thinking of.
Okay, yeah. Okay, but and that's the one with the blood.
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you want to tell the story?
No, I'll let you tell it.
So we're there 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like, Pete, you got to go work in the morning. And there are other friends going, Pete, you got to go work in the morning. You're like, you know, I'll be all right. I'm going to phone in sick. I'm going to phone in sick, and she'll let me off. I won't need to go to work. So you've gone up to the bathroom to get ready for work. It's like 7 o'clock in the morning. We've had no sleep. We're still sitting at the table. You've come down. There's blood coming down here from where you've been sniffing all night.
Yeah.
No, I'll be all right. I'll just pull into work and tell her I've had a really bad night, really bad, and I'll come home. And I remember getting a phone call at like 5 o'clock in the evening, and you were still there. It's like, I'm still here. Off me fucking nut. So we certainly have had some crazy evenings over the years. But tell me, what do you think you lost because of your addiction?
I said to you, I think the worst thing for me, the financials to one side, do you know what, money comes, money goes. That's a massive lesson that I learned in my life. You know, and it's something that I try and correct now. I do save for a rainy day now. I do invest more. I do try and safeguard what I've got for my family. But I think the worst thing that I lost, as I said to you, was respect for myself. That was the worst thing that ever happened to me. I was embarrassed by what I'd become.
And your journey now that you've travelled through addiction and come out the other side, how do you think that's changed you as a person?
It's maybe a lot. I used to think I was fucking invincible, in all honesty. And this all wraps up to my depression. You know, I think that, you know, I still seek a lot of help for my depression and go through counselling and therapy for it, and to try and understand and get clarity of why I react to a lot of situations the way I do. I'm quite self-destructive and quite a self-destructive person. And over the years, I felt that I was indestructible, or a lot of people saw me as indestructible. I don't think I was. I think that what I've learned, I think I was quite unstable, and I think I came across indestructible because I wanted someone to beat me.
Yeah.
What I found, what the lesson I really learned from all this was, do you know what? I'm actually not that strong mentally as I thought I was. I think I was more cold and detached. But
I think that's what people saw on the outside.
Yeah. People saw me as a very cold and detached, and
definitely.
I think they saw me as quite an arrogant person.
Definitely. Listen, we used to go into the pub, you and I, and not be racking up on the table, but almost. And people would be up to me in the pub going, your mate's fucking nuts. He's like, he don't talk to no one. He's like, he's off the hinge. And it's like, they don't read you because they don't know you. They just see the external.
Yeah.
And you come across quite, stay the fuck away.
Yeah. And I think that, learning, understanding that now, that's my kind of safeguard. That's my safe place. I hide behind a wall of being quite arrogant and detached. I think inside, the people that know me know that, I'm actually, people find me actually quite funny sometimes. But
I'm not quite sure I'm going to agree with that.
but yeah, I think in all honesty, the biggest lesson I learned from all this was that I am vulnerable. I can fall. I did fall a long way. And interestingly, I managed to pick myself back up.
At what point did you see that? Did you see that during or after?
All the way through.
Even while doing it, you still saw that in yourself?
When I do it, at the times I was doing it, it got to the stage where, as I said to you, I was so embarrassed, but I didn't know what else to do. I don't think, there were a lot of times I couldn't, I probably, there was a lot of times that it was just a really vague existence for me.
And what do you do to help maintain a clean lifestyle now?
I work. Yeah. It's interesting because I asked someone else this quite recently. I was like, what do I do to stay clean? And she was like, you work, Peter, you don't stop working.
To those who don't know you, expand what that means, because I know what that means.
I'm a workaholic.
You've got a day job.
Yeah.
And then on top of your day job.
Yeah, I run I co-own a portfolio of nightclubs, which was something, coming from the doors that I worked for doors for so many years. I saw how they ran, and I then initially years ago, me and my brother started a business of bars, and we both went our separate ways. And it was kind of at that point I then fell into my addiction. And when my daughter was born, I wanted more for her. So I decided to go at it again. And I've got shareholders that we work very closely together, and some of which have been friends for a lot of years. And we built a business together through a wealth of everyone's different knowledges of what we do. It's a really successful business now.
What would you say to somebody who's struggling with addiction to cocaine or alcohol or something else? What advice would you give to them?
I think everybody's different. I think the way that I managed to get clean and the way I was so fortunate is I had that one person who took me away from that environment. I went to live in a different town. Let's be honest, when we were all close, we all lived in Luton. We all lived a stone's throw from each other. We had 24-hour drug dealers that were dropped. Actually, there was do you remember the witching hour? There was, right? So there were some drug dealers that would finish about 5 o'clock in the morning, and they would turn their phone off, right? And there was also some drug dealers that would turn their phone on about 8 o'clock in the morning. So I was like, Els, we're coming up to the witching hour, all right? So we need to get 5 or 6 tickets in to see us through the dry patch, all right? So it was all planning. I like to think I'm an intelligent person. So it was all right, okay, let's get 3 or 4 tickets in, and that will see us through that spell. And then, if we're still going to carry on at 8 o'clock in the morning, I know such and such is turning his phone on then.
I'll tell you what I do remember. I do remember 5, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. I don't know what time it was, but very early hours, when we'd run out, and for some reason, and we know a lot of people, there was nobody about. You know where I'm going with this?
Yeah, I know. Are you talking about cotton wool?
Cotton wool. Tell us the cotton wool.
No, mate, that and I know, right, that the witching hour is upon us, and if you don't plan it properly, then you're only going to get hold of shit. And I think we were twisted to anything and driving around trying to find some random drug dealer.
We did,
and we found one.
We did.
Do you know what I mean? I think it was West Millway in Hitchin.
And it was like cotton wool.
Yeah, it probably was cotton wool, mate. Candy floss probably. But it was an interesting one. I think in all honesty, there were times where, do you remember there was times where I used to grind up fucking Pro Plus?
Yes, I do.
And just to keep me going through the day,
sniffing Pro Plus.
Yeah, 100%.
It's interesting now because being an owner of multiple nightclubs, which is a place that people go and use drugs, drink alcohol. How do you find that being a club owner and being in an environment? Okay, I know you don't have it blatantly in here like we used to do, but even so.
In that period that I was getting clean, and that wasn't like an overnight thing. That was, you know, I did go pretty much cold turkey. There were, you know, do you remember Netflix was starting to come out in these days, and there was like films or documentaries like, was it Cocaine Cowboys?
Mm-hmm.
Put that on one day and I couldn't watch it. I'd have to turn it off and be like, you know, I'm starting to twitch. And there were things that would trigger me. If we talked, it's like all of us. Let's have a clean day. Let's not do no gear today, and let's go out for a coffee and let's go out for something to lunch. We'd go out for lunch. We'd sit there and be like, we start talking about last night or the night before, and before you know it, we're like, I've just fucking ordered one.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean?
That's exactly what happens.
Yeah. And because you're talking about it, it comes in your head, and it's that natural trigger. And for me, I had to get out of that environment. I walked away from some really close friends for a couple of years just to try and give myself an opportunity to get clean. I had someone who took me in, and she was really like a real mother figure. We're still very close now. She took me in and she gave the opportunity to get clean, and none of this would be possible without her.
She gave you the opportunity, but you did it.
Yeah.
And that's the ultimate thing. You did it.
I was lucky. I was very, very lucky. Because it could have gone a very different way.
Pete, thank you for coming clean with me.
Thanks, mate.
Appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.